The espresso machine hissed angrily behind me, its steam rising in ghostly tendrils that mirrored my exhaustion. My fingers ached as I balanced 3 plates along my forearm, a skill perfected over 2 years at Bellanota, the only upscale Italian restaurant in our otherwise forgettable town. The weight of the porcelain threatened to snap my wrist as I navigated between tables, the scent of garlic and truffle oil hanging in the air. "Table 7 needs their check, Sophia." Marco, the floor manager, barked without looking up from his phone. Always demanding, never appreciating. I nodded silently, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind my ear. My double shift had stretched to 12 hours, and the soles of my feet burned inside shoes 1 size too small. A thrift store necessity after my car repair last month drained what little savings I'd accumulated. The restaurant hummed with Thursday night chatter, wealthy patrons whose dinner bills exceeded my daily wages, clinking crystal glasses of wines, whose names I practiced pronouncing alone in my apartment. "Right away," I murmured, though Marco had already turned away, uninterested in my acknowledgement. I'd become good at this, being invisible. After Dad died 3 years ago, leaving me with medical bills and half-finished college credits, I'd learned to move through spaces without disrupting them, to serve without being seen. Tonight was no different, except for the growing ache behind my eyes that threatened to become a full-blown migraine. The front door chimed, and a gust of October air swept through the restaurant. I didn't look up. Marco would seat them, and I'd be assigned their table if they landed in my section. I was arranging silverware when I felt it. A strange shift in the atmosphere, like the air pressure dropping before a storm. Voices lowered. Conversations paused. I glanced up. 3 men stood at the entrance. 2 were broad-shouldered with impassive faces, scanning the room with mechanical precision. But it was the man between them who commanded the space without effort, tall with an athletic build beneath what I instantly recognized as a bespoke suit. Italian cut, charcoal gray, no off-the-rack imperfections. His dark hair was swept back from features that belonged on a Renaissance sculpture, all sharp angles and perfect proportions. Even from across the room, I could see eyes the color of expensive whiskey. He didn't look around like someone deciding where to eat. He looked around like someone who already owned everything in his vision. Marco nearly tripped over himself rushing to greet them. His obsequious smile, reserved for the wealthiest patrons, stretched across his face as he bowed slightly. Words were exchanged, too low for me to hear, but I saw Marco's hand gesture toward the private dining room in the back. "Sophia!" His voice sliced through my observation. "Private room now." My stomach nodded. The private room meant important guests, which meant one mistake could cost me my job, and I couldn't lose this job, not with rent due next week. I hurried to the back, grabbing fresh linens and our reserve glassware, the kind we kept for guests who could tell the difference. The private dining room was intimate, with just 1 table, amber lighting, and a window that overlooked the small garden with its twinkling string lights. I worked quickly, setting places for 3, polishing each glass until it gleamed. When they entered, I kept my eyes lowered, reciting the specials with practiced precision. The 2 larger men sat facing the door, their posture rigid. The third, their leader, clearly, took the seat facing the window, though I noticed his reflection was still angled to see the entrance. "And what would you recommend?" His voice was a surprise, deep but gentle, Italian accent subtle but unmistakable, like velvet brushed against skin. I looked up, startled by the direct question. Most wealthy patrons asked what was most expensive, not what I would choose. His eyes locked with mine, and something electric shot through me. Those eyes didn't just look, they evaluated, measured, saw. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen, and the sensation was terrifying. "The ossobuco," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "Chef makes it the traditional way, with saffron risotto." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Not quite a smile, but an acknowledgement. "Then that's what I'll have," I nodded, gathering the menus. As I turned to leave, I felt his gaze lingering on my back, leaving heat in its wake. The evening progressed with a strange tension. I moved between the private room and my other tables, hyper-aware whenever I entered his presence. He barely spoke, letting his companions order wine and handle conversation with an unseen caller. But each time I approached, his attention shifted entirely to me, as though nothing else in the room existed. When I delivered their main courses, one of his companions received a call. The conversation was rapid Italian, too quick and colloquial for my 2 semesters of college language courses to follow. But the shift in atmosphere was immediate. The man who'd taken the call muttered something to the boss, whose expression hardened into something cold and dangerous. He nodded once, then spoke in English, perhaps for my benefit as I arranged their plates. "Tell Russo we'll meet as planned. Nothing has changed." I pretended not to hear, but when I reached for his water glass to refill it, his fingers brushed against mine. Deliberately, I was certain. The contact sent a jolt of electricity up my arm. His skin was warm, the back of his hand marked by a thin white scar. "Grazie, Sophia," he said softly, my name sounding different in his mouth. Something precious rather than ordinary. How did he know my name? I hadn't introduced myself, just recited specials and taken orders. Then I remembered the small nameplate pinned to my black shirt, of course. The private dining room had its own exit to the parking lot, a feature that wealthy patrons appreciated for discretion. When they finally departed 2 hours later, leaving a tip that equaled 2 weeks of my salary, I exhaled for what felt like the first time all night. The restaurant closed at 11, and by midnight, I was finally walking to my apartment 6 blocks away. The October air had turned bitter, and I wrapped my thin jacket tighter around my body, cursing myself for not budgeting for a warmer coat. Streetlights cast long shadows as my steps echoed against brick buildings and darkened shop windows. I was 3 blocks from home when I heard it. The squeal of tires against asphalt, angry voices growing louder. I quickened my pace, keeping my head down. Whatever was happening, I wanted no part of it. But as I passed a narrow alley between a closed bakery and a tailor's shop, a gunshot cracked through the night. I froze, heart hammering against my ribs. "You think Castellano will let this stand?" A voice snarled from the darkness. "You're dead already!" Another shot, closer this time. Instinct told me to run, but before I could move, someone staggered from the alley, clutching their side. Blood seeped between their fingers, black in the dim light. It was him, the man from the restaurant. His perfect suit was torn, his face contorted with pain. Behind him, shadows moved in the alley, advancing. Our eyes met, and recognition flashed across his face. "Run," he commanded, voice strained but authoritative. I should have. Every rational thought screamed at me to flee, to save myself from whatever dangerous game I'd stumbled into. But something else, something deeper and far less logical, took control. Instead of running away, I ran toward him. He stared in disbelief as I reached him, slipping my shoulder under his arm to support his weight. "My apartment," I gasped. "It's close." More shouts from the alley. We had seconds before they emerged. With strength born from desperation, I half-dragged him across the street and down another alley I knew cut through to my block. His breath came in ragged bursts against my hair, his weight nearly buckling my knees. But somehow, we moved forward, his blood warm and sticky against my side. "Why?" he managed, the single word heavy with pain and confusion. "I don't know," I answered honestly, guiding him around a corner. And I didn't. I couldn't explain the impulse that made me risk everything for a stranger who had looked at me like I mattered. We reached the back entrance of my apartment building, an aging structure with a perpetually broken security door. I fumbled with my keys, hyper-aware of his labored breathing and the distant sounds of pursuit. My third-floor walk-up nearly defeated us. By the time I unlocked my apartment door and helped him inside, his face had gone ashen, sweat beading along his hairline despite the cold. "Bathroom," I directed, guiding him through my tiny living space, suddenly self-conscious of the second-hand furniture and bare walls that marked my existence. I eased him onto the closed toilet lid and frantically searched the cabinet for the first aid kit I'd assembled after one too many waitressing injuries. "They'll be looking," he said, eyes struggling to focus. "You shouldn't have—" "Don't talk," I interrupted, surprising myself with my boldness. I helped him remove his jacket and blood-soaked shirt, revealing a wound along his ribs, a deep graze rather than a direct hit. Relief flooded me. This I could handle without an emergency room. As I cleaned the wound, my hand steady despite my racing thoughts, I finally asked the question, "Who are you?" His eyes, clearer now, focused entirely on my face, studied me for a long moment before he answered. "My name is Dante Ricci," he said, as though the name should mean something to me. When I showed no recognition, something like wonder crossed his features. "And you saved my life, Sophia." The way he said my name made me shiver. There was possession in it already, though I didn't recognize the danger then. "I just did what anyone would do," I murmured, securing gauze over his wound. His hand caught mine, grip gentle but unyielding. "No," he said softly. "What you did is extraordinary, and I never forget a debt." Something in his tone made me look up, and what I saw in his eyes stole my breath. Intensity, admiration, and something darker, more primal. In that moment, held in his gaze, I felt like a small creature that had unwittingly attracted the attention of a predator. One that might protect me from all others, only to devour me himself. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt alive for the first time in years. "You should rest," I said, pulling my hand free. "You can take my bed. I'll sleep on the couch." He shook his head. "I need to make a call first." I gave him privacy, retreating to my tiny kitchen to make tea with hands that had finally begun to tremble. What had I done? Brought a wounded stranger into my home. A man who was clearly involved in something dangerous. A man who had been shot at for God's sake. Yet when he appeared in my kitchen doorway, steadier now, phone in hand, all my doubts scattered like autumn leaves in a gust of wind. "My men will be here in 20 minutes, he said, and I nodded, not questioning why he had men or what exactly that meant. Some truths are better left unspoken, at least for one night. "The tea is ready," I offered lamely, as though we were old friends having a normal evening. He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his face from intimidating to devastating. "Grazie, Sophia." Neither of us knew then how those simple words would be the beginning of everything that followed. How that night, that single impulsive decision to help instead of run, would reshape my entire existence. That by saving Dante Ricci, I had changed the course of both our lives irrevocably, and that by morning, I would belong to him in ways I couldn't yet imagine. Morning arrived with golden light streaming through my threadbare curtains, and the disorienting awareness that something fundamental had changed. For a moment, I lay on my lumpy couch, staring at the water stain on my ceiling, trying to convince myself that last night had been a stress-induced hallucination. The smell of expensive cologne lingering in my apartment said otherwise. Dante had left shortly after his men arrived. 3 serious-faced individuals in dark suits who'd swept my apartment with practiced efficiency before escorting him away. He hadn't said goodbye, just held my gaze for one long moment, before disappearing into a sleek black Escalade with tinted windows. I'd slept fitfully, jumping at every sound, half expecting someone to break down my door. But morning had come, and with it, an eerie return to normalcy that felt more surreal than the night's events. My phone chimed with a text from Marco. "Don't bother coming in today. Restaurant closed for renovations." Renovations? Bella Notte had just been updated 6 months ago, and Marco had made no mention of further work when I left last night. A knot formed in my stomach as I made coffee with hands that weren't quite steady. A knock at my door made me freeze, coffee mug suspended halfway to my lips. No one ever visited me. I had few friends in this city, and those I did have never dropped by unannounced. Heart racing, I approached the door, peering through the peephole. A young woman stood in the hallway, holding a large white box. She wore a crisp uniform I didn't recognize, her posture professional and patient. I opened the door cautiously, chain still in place. "Miss Sophia Calloway?" she asked, her voice briskly efficient. I nodded, wondering how she knew my full name when I only wore Sophia on my nameplate at work. "Delivery for you." She extended the box through the narrow opening. "The car is waiting downstairs when you're ready." "Car? What car?" "I didn't order anything, and I'm not expecting—" "Mr. Ricci sends his regards," she interrupted smoothly. "He's requested your presence for lunch. The car will wait as long as necessary, but he hoped you might be available at noon." My mouth went dry. Mr. Ricci? Her expression remained neutral, but something like sympathy flickered in her eyes. I suggest you open the box, Miss Calloway. After she departed, I carried the box to my kitchen table, lifting the lid with trembling fingers. Nestled in tissue paper lay a dress of deep emerald silk that shimmered like water when I lifted it. Beneath it, a pair of Italian leather heels that would have cost 2 months of my salary. A small cream-colored card bore a handwritten note in elegant script, a small token of gratitude. Please join me. Dr. I sank into a chair, running my fingers over the luxurious fabric. The last time I'd worn something so beautiful was at my father's funeral. A black dress my aunt had lent me because I'd owned nothing appropriate. Part of me wanted to pack the dress away, call work, and pretend none of this had happened. Go back to being invisible Sophia, struggling but safe in her predictability. But another part, a part I barely recognized, wanted to step into whatever door had opened last night. To be seen again the way Dante Ricci had seen me. At 11:55, I stood on the curb outside my building, the emerald dress fitting as though it had been custom-made for my body. A black Mercedes with tinted windows idled at the curb, the driver stepping out immediately to open the rear door. Miss Calloway, he acknowledged with a slight bow. The car's interior smelled of leather and subtle cologne, the same scent that had lingered in my apartment. As we glided through the city streets, I watched familiar buildings pass by, feeling like a stranger in my own life. We drove to the outskirts of the city, eventually turning onto a private road that wound through manicured grounds before reaching a modernist mansion of glass and stone. Security cameras tracked our approach, and I noticed men positioned discreetly around the property, their vigilance obvious to my now alert eyes. The driver led me through a soaring entryway into a sunlit terrace overlooking manicured gardens and a crystal blue infinity pool. And there he was, Dante Ricci, standing with his back to me, speaking quietly on a phone, his posture betraying no hint of last night's injury. He turned as though sensing my presence, ending his call abruptly. The impact of his full attention hit me like a physical force. He wore casual clothes today. Dark jeans and a light gray cashmere sweater that somehow looked more expensive than last night's suit. Sophia, he said, my name still sounding like a precious thing in his mouth. His eyes traveled over me appreciatively. You look beautiful. Thank you for the dress, I managed, fighting the urge to fidget under his gaze. You didn't need to. I wanted to, he interrupted gently. Please, sit. The table was set for 2, with crystal glasses and silver serving dishes. A uniformed server appeared silently to pour wine and present a selection of antipasti. How are you feeling? I asked, gesturing vaguely to his side where the bullet had grazed him. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Better, thanks to you. He leaned forward slightly. Do you know who I am, Sophia? I shook my head. You told me your name is Dante Ricci. Man, that means nothing to you? Should it? He sat back, something like wonder crossing his features again. You truly don't know. It wasn't a question this time. I'm just a waitress, I said, uncomfortably aware of the vast gulf between us. I don't move in circles where I would know important people. And yet you risked your life for a stranger. His voice had softened, his eyes never leaving my face. Why? I looked down at my plate, struggling to articulate what I barely understood myself. I saw someone in trouble, I just reacted. Most people would have run the other way. I'm not most people, I guess. The words came out more defiantly than I'd intended. His smile deepened. No, you certainly are not. The lunch progressed with Dante asking questions about my life, my childhood in a small town upstate, my father's long illness that had drained our modest savings, my abandoned nursing degree. He listened with an intensity that made each mundane detail of my existence seem fascinating. In turn, he shared little about himself. Born in Naples, raised between Italy and America, now heading family businesses in both countries. He spoke of his mother with reverence, mentioned travels to places I'd only seen in magazines, and skillfully deflected whenever the conversation approached anything too personal. Your restaurant is closed today, he said casually as dessert was served. I looked up sharply. How did you know that? He took a sip of espresso, watching me over the rim of the cup. I own it now. The fork slipped from my fingers, clattering against fine china. You... What? I purchased Bella Not this morning. The previous owner was eager to sell. But why? Dante set his cup down deliberately. The men who attacked me last night know I dined there. It wouldn't be safe for anyone associated with the restaurant if ownership remained the same. Cold realization washed over me. The people after you, they're dangerous. Yes. And now they might connect me to you because I helped you. His expression grew serious. I would never allow harm to come to you, Sophia. The way he said it, absolute, final, sent a shiver down my spine. Not a reassurance, but a declaration of possession. I should go, I said suddenly, standing up. Thank you for lunch and for the dress, but I can't. Can't what? He rose in one fluid motion. No evidence of injury in his movements. Accept my gratitude, or are you afraid of something else? I met his gaze directly. I'm afraid of what helping you has started. He moved toward me then, his steps measured and deliberate, like a predator approaching skittish prey. When he stood before me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, he raised one hand to brush a strand of hair from my face. What it started, he said softly, was something inevitable. From the moment you entered that private dining room, Sophia, I noticed you. Not just your beauty, though you possess that in abundance. I noticed how you moved through the world, strong yet unnoticed, bearing burdens without complaint. His fingers trailed along my jaw, igniting nerve endings I hadn't known existed. And then you saved me, without thought for yourself. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world? How precious? I swallowed hard, caught between the urge to lean into his touch and the instinct to flee. What exactly is your world, Dante? Because I get the feeling it's not one I belong in. Something darkened in his eyes. My world is complicated, yes. But you've already stepped into it, whether you intended to or not. A discreet cough interrupted us. One of Dante's men stood at the terrace entrance, his expression apologetic but urgent. A moment, Sophia, Dante said, stepping away. They spoke in rapid Italian, too low for me to hear. I watched Dante's posture change subtly, the casual demeanor hardening into something more commanding, more dangerous. When he turned back to me, his expression had shifted, a decision clearly made. I need to attend to something, he said. All business now. Antonio will drive you home. Dante, I began, not sure what I wanted to say, only certain that I couldn't simply return to my life as though none of this had happened. He moved closer again, this time taking my hand in his. I'll come to you tonight, he promised, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. There are things we need to discuss. The drive back to my apartment was silent, my mind racing with questions I was afraid to ask. Antonio escorted me to my door, his vigilance making it clear he wasn't just a driver, but a bodyguard. Mr. Ricci values your safety above all else, Miss Calloway, he said before departing, the statement carrying weight beyond its simple words. Alone in my apartment, I changed out of the beautiful dress, carefully hanging it in my closet beside my shabby everyday clothes. The contrast was jarring, like my life had been before yesterday, and whatever it was becoming now. I tried to distract myself with mundane tasks, but every sound from the hallway made me jump, anticipating Dante's arrival. By evening, my nerves were stretched thin, questions multiplying with each passing hour. Who exactly was Dante Ricci? What kind of family business involved bullets and black Escalades? And most importantly, what did he want from me? As darkness fell, I stood at my window, watching the street below, feeling the weight of invisible eyes. Whether they belonged to Dante's men or those who hunted him, I couldn't tell. But one thing was becoming increasingly clear. By saving Dante Ricci's life, I had irrevocably entangled my own with his. And there would be no going back to the invisible existence I'd known before. Night had fully descended when 3 sharp knocks sounded at my door. I'd been perched on the edge of my sofa for hours, alternating between anxiety and a strange, electric anticipation. The sound still made me jump. Through the peephole, I saw Dante standing alone in the hallway, his powerful frame filling the narrow space. No bodyguards visible, though I suspected they weren't far away. He'd changed into a black sweater and dark pants, casual, yet immaculate. In one hand, he held a small leather briefcase. I opened the door, sudden shyness washing over me. The intimacy of him standing at the threshold of my humble apartment felt more invasive than when I'd dragged his bleeding body through it the night before. "May I come in?" he asked formally, as though we were strangers. I stepped aside, acutely aware of my worn jeans and simple blouse, of everything in my apartment that screamed of my financial struggles. Dante entered, his presence immediately making my space feel smaller. His eyes swept the room in that now familiar assessing way before settling on me. "We need to talk, Sophia." His voice was gentle but firm. "About what happened last night?" I asked, gesturing for him to sit. He chose the armchair, setting the briefcase beside him. "About what happens next." The way he said it, declarative rather than questioning, sent a flutter of unease through me. I perched on the edge of my sofa, hands clasped tightly in my lap. "The men who attacked me work for a rival family," he began without preamble. "The Castellanos. We've maintained an uneasy peace for years, but recently, tensions have escalated. Last night was an assassination attempt." "Because of something called Russo?" I asked, remembering the conversation I'd overheard at the restaurant. His eyebrows lifted slightly, impressed or perhaps concerned by my recall. "You were paying attention." "I notice things," I said simply. "It's how I've survived." Something softened in his expression. "Yes, Russo is a complication, a former associate who's playing both sides. I was meeting him to resolve the situation when I was ambushed." I took a deep breath. "And these Castellanos, they saw me help you." "Possibly," he conceded. "Which puts you in danger, Sophia. A danger for which I am entirely responsible." "I made my own choice," I countered. "Yes, you did." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes holding mine with that magnetic intensity. "But choices have consequences, and I will not allow you to suffer for showing me compassion." "What does that mean exactly?" He opened the briefcase, removing a thick envelope. "Inside are documents for a new identity, a bank card connected to an offshore account with sufficient funds to start a new life, and tickets to anywhere you wish to go. You can disappear tonight, begin fresh somewhere the Castellanos would never find you." I stared at the envelope, shock rendering me momentarily speechless. "You want me to just vanish? Leave everything behind? It would be safest," he said, though something in his tone suggested the words cost him. I stood abruptly, anger flaring through me. "This is my home, my life. I'm not running away because some Mafia war spilled into it." The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted their bluntness. But Dante didn't flinch at the accusation. "Then there's the second option," he said quietly. "Which is? You come under my protection, officially." I frowned. "What does that mean? Officially?" He stood now, too, closing the distance between us with 2 measured steps. Up close, I could see the flecks of amber in his eyes, smell the subtle cologne that clung to his skin. "In my world, Sophia, there are clear boundaries, clear signals of who belongs to whom. To protect you properly, those signals would need to be unambiguous." "Belong?" I repeated, the word igniting something dangerous inside me. "I don't belong to anyone, Dante." His hand rose to cup my cheek, the contact sending electricity racing across my skin. "Not yet," he murmured, his thumb brushing my lower lip. "But you could." I stepped back, needing distance to think clearly. "So those are my options? Run away forever or become your... what? Your possession?" Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "My woman, under my name and my protection. And if I choose neither?" My voice was steadier than I felt. "Then I would have men stationed outside your door day and night, following your every move, intercepting every threat. You would live in a cage of my making, safe but never free." His honesty was brutal, unapologetic. "I don't recommend this option." I turned away, moving to my small kitchen window that overlooked an alley below. A black SUV idled there, confirmation that his men already watched my building. "Why not just let me take my chances?" I asked softly. "I saved you, yes, but that doesn't make me your responsibility." He moved behind me, not touching but close enough that I felt his breath stir my hair. Because I protect what's mine, Sophia. And from the moment you dragged me through the darkness, something in me recognized you as mine. I turned to face him, our bodies inches apart in the narrow kitchen. You don't even know me. I know enough. His voice dropped lower. I know you're stronger than you believe. I know you've been carrying burdens alone for too long. I know when our eyes first met, you felt the same recognition I did. My pulse raced traitorously because he was right. I had felt something, a connection that defied logic or reason. What would it mean? I whispered. Being yours. His eyes darkened. You would move into my home. You would be introduced as mine. You would want for nothing. Your father's medical debts cleared. Your education completed if you wish it. And in return? Loyalty, he said simply. And your presence at my side. My body, you mean? I challenged, heat rising to my cheeks. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I won't pretend I don't desire you, Sophia, but I would never take what isn't freely given. And if the Castellanos are dealt with, if the danger passes, you would be free to go, he said, though something in his expression suggested he didn't believe that day would come, or that he would let it. I stepped away, needing space to breathe. This is insane. Yesterday I was just a waitress. Now I'm choosing between exile and becoming... what? A mafia boss's girlfriend? His laugh was unexpectedly warm. Such American terms. In Italy we would say companion, or perhaps eventually something more permanent. The implication sent a shock through me. I need time to think. Time is a luxury we may not have. He countered, reaching for my hand. The touch was gentle but insistent, drawing me back to him. The Castellanos are not known for their patience. Neither, if I'm honest, am I. His proximity was intoxicating, clouding my judgment. I pulled my hand free. One day, I insisted. Give me one day to decide. He studied me for a long moment before nodding once. Until tomorrow night, then. But you won't leave this apartment without my men accompanying you. Fine, I conceded, knowing arguments would be futile. Dante reached into his pocket, extracting a slim phone. This is secure. My number is the only one programmed. Call if you need anything at all. As he prepared to leave, he paused at the door, turning back to me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Possessive, yet vulnerable. Whatever you choose, Sophia, know this. What I feel for you is not gratitude. It's something far more dangerous. After he left, I sank onto my couch, mind spinning with impossible choices. I'd spent years constructing a life of careful independence after my father's death had left me alone in the world. Struggling, yes, but answering to no one. Now Dante Ricci offered security wrapped in golden chains. Sleep evaded me that night. I paced my apartment, weighing options that seemed equally impossible. Leave everything behind, my few friends, my father's grave that I visited monthly with fresh flowers, the city I'd come to know as home. Or step into Dante's world of wealth and danger, becoming attached to a man whose business clearly operated outside the law. Dawn found me at my kitchen table, the secure phone Dante had given me lying before me like a challenge. On impulse, I picked it up and dialed. Sophia. He answered immediately, his voice alert despite the early hour. Is everything all right? I need to see you, I said, surprised by my own boldness. But not at your mansion. Somewhere neutral. A pause. Then, there's a place. I'll send Antonio in an hour. The place turned out to be a small, private beach north of the city. Antonio drove me to a gated property with a stone path leading down to a crescent of sand sheltered by rocky cliffs. Dante was already there, standing at the water's edge, watching waves crash against distant rocks. He turned as I approached, the morning sunlight catching the angles of his face. In this setting, away from luxury restaurants and modernist mansions, he seemed somehow more human, more attainable. My mother loved this beach, he said by way of greeting. It was the first property I purchased when I took over the family business. It's beautiful, I acknowledged, slipping off my shoes to feel sand between my toes. Peaceful. Few things in my life are peaceful, Sophia. His honesty was disarming. But this place, it reminds me there's more to existence than power struggles and business concerns. I moved to stand beside him, watching sunlight dance across the water. Tell me the truth about what you do, Dante. What your family business really is. He was quiet for a long moment, measuring his words. My grandfather came to this country with nothing but determination and old-world skills. He built an empire from the ground up. Import, export, construction, legitimate enterprises. But yes, other ventures too. Protection services, dispute resolution, underground gambling, criminal enterprises, I translated. Some illegal by American law, yes, he admitted without apology, but governed by our own code of honor. And you? What kind of man are you, Dante Ricci? He turned to face me fully. I am a man of contradictions, Sophia. I can be ruthless in business and tender in love. I protect those under my care with unwavering devotion and punish enemies with equal resolve. I honor tradition, but am not bound by old prejudices. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining with gentle insistence. And I am a man who has never felt for any woman what I feel for you after just 2 days. It defies logic, yet I cannot deny it. The raw honesty in his voice made my chest tighten. I'm afraid, I confessed. Not just of the danger, but of losing myself in you. His free hand rose to brush hair from my face. I don't want to change who you are, Sophia. Your spirit, your compassion. These are what drew me to you, but your world would change me, whether you intended it or not. Perhaps, he acknowledged. Or perhaps you would change my world. We stood there as the tide inched closer, suspended in a moment of possibility. Finally, I took a deep breath and met his gaze directly. I won't run, I said firmly. I won't abandon my life out of fear. But I'm not ready to move into your home, to be introduced as yours before I even know what that means. Instead of disappointment, respect flashed in his eyes. What do you propose? A compromise. I accept your protection. I get to know you, the real you, not just Dante Ricci, the powerful businessman. And we see where this connection leads us. His thumb traced circles on my palm, sending shivers up my arm. And you'll give us a genuine chance? No walls? No pretenses? I nodded, knowing I was agreeing to something that would irrevocably alter my life's course. His smile then, slow, genuine, transforming his face from handsome to breathtaking, made my heart stutter in my chest. Then we have an agreement, Sophia Calloway. He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss against my knuckles that felt like a seal on a pact. And I am a man who honors his agreements. As we walked back up the beach, his hand still holding mine, I felt the weight of eyes watching from a discreet distance, his security, ensuring our privacy while maintaining vigilance. It was a stark reminder of the world I was stepping into, a world where danger lurked in shadows, where protection came with possession, and where the line between safety and captivity might prove dangerously thin. 2 weeks passed in a surreal blur. Dante kept his word about our compromise, never pushing me to move into his mansion, but instead integrating himself into my modest life in ways both subtle and overwhelming. My apartment building had new security overnight, a discreet team monitoring entrances, a state-of-the-art system installed on my door. Bella Notte reopened after renovations that somehow included a promotion for me to assistant manager, though I suspected this was Dante's way of keeping me in a controlled environment. Each evening after work, he would arrive at my door, sometimes with Antonio or other security, sometimes miraculously alone. He brought dinner from restaurants I could never have afforded, wine from his personal collection, and stories that carefully skirted the dangerous edges of his business while revealing the man beneath the power. I learned he spoke 5 languages fluently, had a weakness for his mother's tiramisu recipe, and could quote Dante Alighieri's poetry from memory, a family tradition for which he'd been named. He listened to my stories of nursing school with genuine interest, asked thoughtful questions about my father, and never once made me feel lesser for my modest circumstances. And each night, he would leave with nothing more than a kiss, sometimes on my hand, sometimes my cheek, occasionally brushing the corner of my mouth with restrained passion that left me breathless and confused. It was a careful seduction, and I knew it. Yet the measured pace allowed me glimpses of a man far more complex than the powerful Mafia boss I'd first imagined. Tonight, he'd insisted on cooking himself, arriving with bags of fresh ingredients and taking over my tiny kitchen with commanding efficiency. The domesticity of Dante Ricci chopping vegetables in my apartment was so incongruous, I couldn't help but laugh. "Something amusing?" he asked, glancing up with a raised eyebrow. I leaned against the counter, watching his skilled hands work, just trying to reconcile the man making risotto in my kitchen with the one who has armed guards following him everywhere. A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "We all contain multitudes, Sophia." "Some more dangerous than others," I countered. He set down his knife, turning to face me fully. "Does that still frighten you?" I considered the question honestly. "Not in the way it did at first," I admitted. "But I still wonder sometimes if I'm seeing the real you, or just the parts you want me to see." Dante moved closer, his hands settling lightly on my waist. In the 2 weeks since our beach agreement, he'd touched me with increasing frequency, casual gestures of possession that I found myself anticipating rather than resisting. "I've shown you more of myself than anyone else in my life," he said softly. "But you're right. There are sides of me you haven't witnessed. Parts of my business that I've deliberately kept separate from you. To protect me? Yes." His thumb traced circles at my hip bone, a distracting sensation. "And because I fear they would drive you away." The honesty disarmed me. Before I could respond, his phone vibrated in his pocket. He frowned, checking the screen. "I need to take this," he said apologetically. "Continue stirring the risotto." I nodded, moving to the stove as he stepped into my living room, his voice dropping to a murmur as he answered. Though I couldn't make out the words, the shift in his tone was unmistakable. Gentle Dante vanishing, replaced by the commanding presence I'd glimpsed that first night at Bella Knot. When he returned, a new tension radiated from his shoulders. "Is everything okay?" I asked, sensing the change. "A business matter," he said dismissively. "Nothing for you to worry about," but throughout dinner, I noticed his attention repeatedly drifting, checking his phone, his security detail making more frequent passes by my windows. "Dante," I finally said, setting down my wine glass. "What's going on?" He studied me for a long moment, as though weighing a decision. "The Castellano situation has escalated. We've received intelligence that they're planning something significant." Cold fear slid down my spine. "Against you?" "Against my interests," he said carefully. "Possibly against people associated with me. The implication hung in the air between us. People like me. I think it's time to reconsider our arrangement," he continued, his expression serious. "My home has security measures this apartment can never match, no matter how many men I station outside. You want me to move in with you?" It wasn't a question. "Yes." No pretense, no manipulation. Just the direct honesty I'd come to expect from him. I stood, clearing our plates to give my hands something to do while my thoughts raced. The past 2 weeks had drawn me deeper into Dante's orbit, each day revealing new layers to the man behind the power. I'd found myself thinking of him constantly, missing his presence when he wasn't near, craving his touch when he was. But moving into his home felt like a final surrender, an acknowledgement that my independent life was truly over. "This threat?" I asked, turning back to him. "How serious is it?" Dante rose, moving to join me by the sink. "Serious enough that I've increased security on all my properties and key personnel. Serious enough that I haven't slept properly in 3 nights, knowing you're here instead of where I can personally ensure your safety." His hand brushed mine, the contact sending familiar electricity through my veins. "I'm not using this as an excuse, Sophia. If I could keep you safe here, I would honor our original agreement." I looked up at him, searching his face for deception, but finding only genuine concern. "When would you want me to move?" "Tonight, ideally." At my startled expression, he continued, "My men could pack whatever you need while we finish dinner. We'd be at my estate within the hour. That's very sudden." His fingers interlaced with mine. "The luxury of time is not something we have." As though punctuating his statement, his phone vibrated again. The tightening of his jaw told me the news wasn't good even before he answered. The conversation was brief, in rapid Italian that I'd begun to understand fragments of over the past weeks. When he hung up, his expression had hardened to granite. "What is it?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. "They've made a move against Russo." "He's missing." I frowned, trying to piece together implications from the fragments Dante had shared over our weeks together. He's the one who was working with both families? The complication? Dante nodded, impressed as always by my attention to detail. If they have him, they have information that could compromise several of my operations, and potentially information about you. That last part hit me like a physical blow. About me? Why would he know anything about me? Dante's expression turned apologetic. "Because I've had men watching you since before the night of the attack. Russo was heading that security detail." I stepped back, shock and betrayal washing over me. "You were having me watched? Before we even met?" He didn't flinch from my anger. "Yes." "Why?" My voice had risen despite myself. "I was nobody to you then, because I noticed you the moment I walked into Bella Notte," he said quietly, "and I make a point of knowing everything about anyone who captures my interest." The revelation should have terrified me. This powerful man had been observing me, investigating me, long before our paths officially crossed. Instead, I felt a confused mixture of indignation and a strange heated thrill at having been seen so completely. "What exactly did you find out about me?" I demanded. "That you visit your father's grave on the 10th of every month with white lilies. That you volunteer at the free clinic on Sundays despite your exhausting work schedule. That you send money to your aunt in Rochester even when you can barely make rent." His voice had softened with each revelation. "I learned you were extraordinary, Sophia. Long before you dragged me bleeding through that alley." I wrapped my arms around myself, processing this new reality. And now this Russo, who knows all this about me, is in enemy hands. Yes. The single word carried the weight of genuine regret, which is why we need to move you tonight. Please, Sophia. In that moment, looking at this complicated, dangerous man who had upended my carefully constructed life, I realized the decision had already been made. From the instant I'd chosen to help him that night instead of running away, my path had been set. "All right," I conceded quietly. "I'll come with you tonight." Relief transformed his face, vulnerability breaking through his controlled exterior. He closed the distance between us, one hand cupping my cheek with surprising gentleness. "I will keep you safe," he promised, his eyes holding mine with fierce intensity. "Whatever it costs." His thumb traced my lower lip, a gesture that had become familiar yet still sent heat cascading through me. When he leaned in, I met him halfway, our lips connecting in a kiss that ignited something primal and consuming. Unlike the restrained gestures of the past weeks, this kiss held nothing back. His arms encircled me completely, drawing me against the solid wall of his chest as his mouth claimed mine with passionate possession. I responded with equal fervor, weeks of tension and attraction culminating in a moment of surrender. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, his forehead rested against mine. "I've wanted to do that since I first saw you," he confessed. "What took you so long?" I asked, surprising myself with my boldness. A genuine smile spread across his face, transforming his features. "I was giving you time to run away. You never did. Maybe I don't want to run." His expression sobered. Even knowing the danger, the complications of my life, I thought of my existence before him. The endless struggle, the loneliness, the feeling of moving through life unseen. Then I thought of these past 2 weeks, of being truly seen, valued, protected in a way I hadn't experienced since my father's death. "I'm choosing this," I said firmly. "I'm choosing you, complications and all." The kiss that followed sealed something between us, a pact more binding than words could express. When Antonio and 2 other security men arrived to pack my belongings, Dante kept me close, his hand rarely leaving mine, as I indicated what to take and what to leave. The drive to his estate passed in charged silence, his thumb tracing patterns on my palm that spoke of promises yet to be fulfilled. As we passed through the imposing security gates, I felt a distinct shift, crossing a threshold into a world I still only partially understood. The mansion was quiet at this late hour, staff appearing briefly to take my modest luggage before disappearing with practiced discretion. Dante led me through soaring halls to a wing I hadn't seen during my previous visit. "These are my private quarters," he explained, opening double doors to reveal a spacious suite decorated in tasteful masculinity, dark woods, leather furniture, and expansive windows overlooking moonlit gardens. "You'll stay here tonight," he continued, gesturing to a connecting door. "Your rooms are through there. I had them prepared after our agreement at the beach, hoping you might eventually accept them." The presumption should have annoyed me, but instead I felt a strange warmth at the evidence of his certainty, his patience in waiting for my decision rather than forcing it. "Dante," I said, stopping him as he moved to show me my rooms, "I don't want to be alone tonight." His eyes darkened, desire plainly visible. "Sophia." "I know what I'm asking," I continued, stepping closer. "I'm not afraid anymore. Not of you. Not of what's between us." His hand cupped my face, thumb caressing my cheek. "Once you truly become mine, there's no going back. Are you certain that's what you want?" In answer, I rose on tiptoes, pressing my lips to his in clear invitation. In one fluid motion, he lifted me into his arms, carrying me toward the massive bed that dominated the far wall of his suite. As he laid me gently on cool sheets, his body following mine down, I knew with absolute certainty that my life had irreversibly changed. For better or worse, I belonged to Dante Ricci now, and he to me. Morning light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, caressing my skin like a whispered promise. I stirred slowly, momentarily disoriented by unfamiliar silk sheets and the weight of a muscular arm draped possessively across my waist. The events of the previous night flooded back in a rush of sensation, Dante's hands memorizing every inch of my body, his whispered Italian endearments against my skin, the exquisite way he'd claimed me as his own. I shifted carefully to look at him, struck by how different he appeared in sleep. The perpetual vigilance softened, the hard lines of power temporarily erased. In repose, I could see traces of the boy he must have been before responsibility and danger shaped him into the man who commanded fear and respect in equal measure. As though sensing my gaze, his eyes opened, instantly alert. The arm around my waist tightened, drawing me closer to his warmth. "You're still here," he murmured, satisfaction evident in his voice. "Where else would I be?" I asked, tracing the defined edge of his jaw with my fingertips. His expression grew serious. "I half expected to wake and find you'd changed your mind, fled in the night. Is that what usually happens?" The question escaped before I could consider its implications. Dante's thumb traced lazy circles on my bare hip. "There's nothing usual about this, Sophia. About us." He pressed a kiss to my forehead. "I've never brought a woman into my private quarters before. Never woken with someone in this bed." The admission stunned me into silence. I'd assumed, given his power and magnetism, that there had been many women before me. The knowledge that I was the first he'd allowed this close felt monumental, terrifying in its significance. Before I could respond, a discreet knock sounded at the door. Dante's body tensed, the vulnerable lover instantly replaced by the vigilant protector. "Yes?" he called, his voice shifting to that commanding tone I'd come to recognize. "Forgive the intrusion, sir," came Antonio's muffled voice. "We have a situation requiring your immediate attention." 5 minutes, Dante responded, already moving with fluid efficiency. He pressed another kiss to my lips, lingering for just a moment. "Stay here. I'll return as soon as I can." I watched him dress with military precision, the transformation fascinating, my passionate lover disappearing beneath the armor of expensive clothing and controlled expressions. At the door, he paused, turning back with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. "Last night changed everything, Sophia. You understand that, don't you?" I nodded, pulling the sheets closer around my naked form. "I understand." After he departed, I explored the suite that would now be my home. My connecting room proved to be a luxurious space with a separate sitting area, walk-in closet, and marble bathroom larger than my entire apartment. Already, my meager possessions had been unpacked and arranged, my worn clothes looking out of place among such opulence. In the closet, I discovered dozens of new garments, dresses, Casual wear, lingerie, all in my size with tags from designers I'd only seen in magazines. A note in Dante's elegant handwriting lay on a shelf, for whenever you're ready. No pressure, only options. The thoughtfulness of the gesture, providing without demanding, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. After showering in the marble sanctuary of a bathroom, I selected simple jeans and a sweater from my own clothes, a small act of independence in this new life of luxury and protection. When I emerged from the suite, a woman in a crisp uniform waited in the hallway. "Miss Calloway," she greeted me with a respectful nod. "I'm Maria, the head of household staff. Mr. Ricci asked me to assist you with anything you might need and show you to breakfast when you're ready." "Where is Dante?" I asked, still unaccustomed to the formality surrounding him. "Mr. Ricci is in his office attending to urgent business. He asked that you make yourself comfortable and said he would join you as soon as possible." Maria led me through the mansion's labyrinthine corridors to a sun-drenched breakfast room overlooking the gardens. A spread that could have fed 10 people awaited. Fresh fruit, pastries, eggs, Italian espresso in a silver pot. "Is someone joining me?" I asked, gesturing to the abundance. Maria smiled gently. "Mr. Ricci wasn't sure what you might prefer, so he requested everything." Of course he had. Dante's approach to life seemed to be comprehensive acquisition. Why choose one option when you could secure them all? After breakfast, restlessness drove me to explore the grounds, accompanied by a discreet security guard who maintained a respectful distance while never letting me out of his sight. The manicured gardens gave way to a small orchard, then a path leading to the private beach Dante had taken me to weeks earlier. I stood at the shoreline, waves lapping at my feet, contemplating how dramatically my life had changed in such a short time. From struggling waitress to the companion of one of the most powerful men in the city, now ensconced in luxury and danger in equal measure. It's a lot to absorb, isn't it? I turned to find Dante approaching, his formal business attire replaced by casual clothes similar to what he'd worn during our first beach meeting. Despite the relaxed clothing, tension radiated from him, evident in the set of his shoulders and the tightness around his eyes. "The situation with Russo?" I asked, instantly alert to his mood. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You're becoming dangerously perceptive, Sophia. Is that a problem?" He reached for my hand, interlacing our fingers. "Not with me, but in my world, noticing too much can be complicated." "Tell me," I insisted, "if I'm truly part of your life now, I need to understand what we're facing." He studied the horizon for a long moment before answering. "Russo's body was found this morning. The Castellanos made their message clear. Cold dread washed over me." "What message?" "That they know who matters to me." His grip tightened on my hand. "They left evidence that they've been watching you. Watching us. Photos of you leaving your apartment, entering Bella Notte. Of us at this beach weeks ago." The implications sank in with nauseating clarity. "So I was right to be concerned about being followed." "Yes. No sugarcoating, no gentle evasions, just honesty, however brutal. It was one of the things I'd come to value most about him. The threat is no longer theoretical, Sophia. They're making a direct move against what they perceive as my vulnerability." "Me?" I said softly. Dante turned to face me fully, his hands framing my face with unexpected gentleness. "You are precious to me," he said, his voice low and fierce. "But you are not my weakness. They've miscalculated badly if they think threatening you will make me retreat." The possessive intensity in his eyes should have frightened me. Instead, I found myself leaning into it, drawing strength from his absolute certainty. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now I end this," he stated simply. "Permanently." I swallowed hard, understanding the implications. "By whatever means necessary?" "Yes." His thumb stroked my cheek, a tender contrast to the coldness in his voice. "I've spent 2 weeks trying to resolve this situation diplomatically, hoping to shield you from the uglier aspects of my business. That option is no longer viable." "Because of me," I whispered, guilt washing over me. "No." His denial was sharp, brooking no argument, because they made a choice to escalate beyond acceptable boundaries. This was always their endgame, Sophia. They've been looking for an excuse to move against my family for years. He guided me to sit on a weathered driftwood log, keeping my hand firmly in his. I need you to understand something. What I feel for you, what we began last night, it changes everything for me. But it changes nothing about who I am, or what I must sometimes do. You're warning me, I realized, studying his expression, making sure I know what I've gotten myself into. Yes. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. When I dragged you bleeding through that alley, I made a choice. When I moved here last night, I made another. I'm not naive, Dante. I understand there are parts of your world I may never fully comprehend or condone. But I've chosen you. All of you. Not just the parts that are easy to love. Something shifted in his eyes, a vulnerability that made my chest tighten. Love, he repeated softly, the word hanging between us like a question. I hadn't meant to use that word so soon, but now that it had escaped, I couldn't take it back. Nor, I realized with startling clarity, did I want to. Yes, I confirmed, meeting his gaze steadily. I think I started falling in love with you the moment you looked at me in that restaurant and really saw me, not just another invisible waitress, but me. He pulled me into his arms with sudden urgency, his lips finding mine in a kiss that contained both tenderness and desperation. When we finally separated, he rested his forehead against mine. Ti amo, Sophia, he murmured. I have never said those words to another woman. I will never say them to anyone but you. The declaration hung between us, weightier than any formal commitment. In that moment, with the ocean crashing nearby and the shadow of danger looming on the horizon, we forged something unbreakable. What happens next? I asked, practical concerns reasserting themselves. His expression hardened, the lover once again giving way to the strategist. You stay here under maximum security. I handle the Castellanos. And afterward? A smile touched his lips. Afterward, we build a life, on our terms. Our terms, I repeated, liking the sound of it. We walked back to the mansion hand in hand, the weight of unspoken promises between us. At the entrance, Antonio waited with barely concealed urgency. Everything is in place, sir, he reported. The meeting is set for midnight. Dante nodded, his demeanor shifting subtly. Have Giuseppe bring the car around, and double the security detail here. No one enters or leaves without my direct authorization. He turned to me, his expression softening fractionally. I need to go. This ends tonight. Fear clutched at my heart, but I forced it down. This was his world, and I had chosen to be part of it. Be careful, I said simply. Always. He pressed a kiss to my forehead. Wait for me in our rooms. I'll come to you when it's done. The hours that followed were the longest of my life. I paced the suite, too anxious to eat the dinner Maria brought, too restless to sleep despite my body's exhaustion. Midnight came and went with no word. Then 1 o'clock. Then 2. When the door finally opened at nearly 3 a.m, I leapt to my feet, relief washing through me at the sight of Dante. Whole, uninjured, alive. But something had changed. A new gravity settled on his shoulders. A weight I could almost see physically pressing upon him. He crossed to the bar without speaking, pouring himself a measure of whiskey that he drank in one swift motion. Is it over? I asked quietly. Yes. He set down the glass with careful precision. The Castellano threat has been neutralized. I didn't ask for details. Some things were better left in the shadows. Instead, I crossed to him, wrapping my arms around his waist and resting my head against his chest. His heartbeat, strong and steady beneath my ear, grounded me in the reality that mattered most. He had returned to me. Slowly, his arms encircled me, the tension in his body gradually easing as we stood in silent communion. This is who I am, Sophia, he said finally, his voice rough with emotion, a man who does what's necessary to protect what's his. Can you truly accept that? I looked up at him, seeing both the dangerous power and the vulnerable humanity that made him who he was. I accept all of you, I said simply. The good, the bad, the complicated. All of it. Relief washed over his features as he drew me closer. Then come to bed, amore mio. Let me hold you tonight. As we lay together in the darkness, his body curled protectively around mine, I reflected on the strange path that had led me here. From an invisible waitress to the beloved of a man whose world operated by its own rules of power, loyalty, and justice. I had saved Dante Ricci's life on a dark street weeks ago, never imagining he would ultimately save mine in return. Not just from external threats, but from the quiet desperation of an existence half-lived. In his dangerous orbit, I had found something I'd never expected. A place where I was truly seen, valued, protected. "What are you thinking?" he murmured against my hair, his breath warm on my skin. I turned in his arms to face him, tracing the strong line of his jaw with gentle fingers. That sometimes the most dangerous choice turns out to be the right one. His smile, rare, genuine, transforming his face from intimidating to breathtaking, was all the confirmation I needed. "Sleep now," he whispered, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "Tomorrow, we begin our life together. And I promise you this, Sophia, no one will ever make you feel invisible again." As I drifted toward sleep in the protective circle of his arms, I knew with absolute certainty that I was exactly where I belonged. The path ahead might be complicated, dangerous, unconventional, but it was ours, and I wouldn't